Well, it was a moment that made big political headlines. Remember this? President Obama slamming the Supreme Court back in 2010. Justice Alito was openly disputing the charges while they were feet away from each other. And the president then accused a recent Supreme Court ruling at the time of opening the floodgates to special interest groups and their money in our politics.
Last week, the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. I don't think American elections should be bankrolled by America's most powerful interests.
Well, fast forward to 2013, and some of the president's biggest supporters now say he's embracing that very idea, and those supporters say this is a major scandal. We investigate. President Obama coming under fire for alleged hypocrisy today as his former campaign apparatus, which is a tax-exempt group, now plans to raise unlimited funds from corporate and other donors to help push the president's agenda. Some of the president's former supporters say this is a serious scandal. Joining us now, Dave Bossie. He's president and CEO of Citizens United and Citizens United Foundation. Now, Citizens United, our viewers may be sitting there thinking, that sounds familiar. Why does that sound so familiar? And it could be, David, because this is a case the president hates. It's a case that you were involved in. That's your group, Citizens United. It went all the way up to the Supreme Court in 2010, and it was a question about whether corporations could push all huge amounts of donations into presidential politics, or whether they couldn't. That's very oversimplified. But the president lost on that, and the ruling was that corporations and unions, for that matter, could make these big donations. Here's the president in 2010 railing on that decision that you won.
Last week, the Supreme Court reversed a century of law that I believe will open the floodgates for special interests, including foreign corporations, to spend without limit in our elections. I don't think American elections should be bankrolled by America's most powerful interests, or worse, by foreign entities. They should be decided by the American people. And I'd urge Democrats and Republicans to pass a bill that helps correct some of these problems.
And as recently as this past summer, he was pushing for a constitutional amendment to overturn Citizens United. And what a difference a few months or a few years make, David, because now we find out that his former campaign apparatus, Jim Messina, all the guys that helped him get elected are now in this tax-exempt group, and they are saying unlimited donations from corporations, welcome here. More on. Your thoughts?
Well, what a difference an election makes. Look, he won in 2008, and back in 2008, actually in 2007, he said that he would accept public financing. He did not. He realized that he could outraise and spend John McCain in 2008, and so he went back on his word there. He took corporate money into his inaugural committee. He's now, look, I don't care that he has flipped his campaign into a C4 and is going to do political operations to help his agenda, but let's be honest about it. Instead, he's a hypocrite. Now his left-wing, allies who have been very supportive of him over the last several years are now coming out to say, well, he really shouldn't do this. But the hypocrisy is so thick, it's dripping, it's kind of entertaining from my seat.
Now, the two things are a little different because Citizens United was about whether you could spend money on elections and a candidate, right? And yes. This group is going to take money to push an agenda, to push policies, which there is a difference in that legally. But this group,
certainly.
But this
certainly.
group, you refer to it as a C4. That's a tax-exempt organization, and there are already some Republican lawmakers who are saying, all right, if you're going to take unlimited corporate donations into a tax-exempt entity that exists solely to push the president's agenda, shouldn't we be honest and say that an organization is really about pushing politics and not get tax-exempt status?
Well, let me just say this, Megyn. Citizens United is a C4. Citizens United is a nonprofit corporation that does political activities all across the board and has for 25 years. The Heritage Foundation has a C4. Groups on the left have C4s, and it's been that way forever. The only difference here is that the campaign committee, the actual campaign, is now flipping to become a C4. So that's why politicians are going to grab onto it. I urge all the politicians on both sides to slow down and think about what they're doing, because whenever they rush into something, they tend to make bad policy.
Well, the president says he's going to disclose the donors of this group, so we're going to know who they are. So if there's any, payback, if a corporation makes a big donation into this tax-exempt group, and then David Plouffe and who's the other one, Jim Messina, go argue on behalf of that organization's cause, that corporation's cause, and President Obama does something that then pleases that corporation, then we'll know, because he's going to disclose the donors.
Well, I think we will, whether they have any direct relation to what Jim Messina is doing. Look, I don't want to besmirch these guys either, because they haven't done anything wrong. What I want to say is that President Obama's a hypocrite, because he has said for years, many, many years, that he would not do this, and now he is. That is really the issue. This guy will do and say anything to get elected, and now he'll do and say anything it's necessary to get his left-wing radical agenda passed, and if that takes raising hundreds of millions of dollars through this new C4, he's going to do it, because he knows it helps his legacy and it helps his legislative agenda. That's what this is all about.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting to hear some of the groups on the left call this huge potential for government corruption, a scandal. They want him to reverse himself, so we shall see. Dave, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.